Today, we're going to dive into a really beautiful piece of classic spiritual writing. It tackles a question that I think is pretty universal. How do we deal with our own imperfections? Let's get right into it. You know, at the heart of this whole thing is a question I think most of us have probably asked at some point. How can I possibly be loved when I am so aware of all my flaws? Well, the text we're looking at today offers a pretty powerful answer to that. So, our story begins with this moment of really deep personal conflict. It's about a soul just wrestling with a painful contradiction inside itself. And we're pulling this directly from the source text itself. What's cool about it is that it's written almost like a diary entry, which makes the whole experience feel super immediate and honestly really relatable. Okay, so picture this. The narrator's standing there, just looking at the sun, admiring how brilliant it is. You know, this incredible symbol of God's creation and goodness. But even with all that beauty on the outside, internally, they just feel cold. Like there's this huge distance between them and all that goodness. And this is what leads to their big, desperate question. They see the absolute magnificence of the Creator right there in the sun, but all they can feel is their own unworthiness. It's that classic spiritual crisis, right? Seeing all the good in the world, but feeling completely trapped in your own imperfection. How can those two things even exist at the same time? But then, right in the middle of all this inner turmoil, an answer comes. And this, right here, is where the text offers a really surprising and honestly powerful shift in how we see things. Before we get to the answer, let me just ask you this. When you think of an all-powerful being, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What do you think is the greatest, most incredible expression of infinite power? For most of us, and for the narrator at first, the answer is pretty obvious. Power is shown in these grand, majestic acts of creation. You know, making the sun, the moon, the heavens, the earth. And yeah, of course, that is absolutely majestic. But the response given in the text is something else entirely. It completely reframes the whole idea of power. The divine voice suggests that maybe the greatest expression of omnipotence isn't creation at all, but benignity, a kind of perfect tolerance for the imperfect. The text calls this a benignity of wisdom. Think about that. It's a power that doesn't just create something and walk away. It's a power that patiently guides. And it shines brightest, it says, in its tolerance for those who aren't perfect yet, gently leading them toward perfection without forcing them. Its power shown purely through patience. Now that's a pretty big abstract idea, right? So to make this concept of divine tolerance a little easier to wrap our heads around, the text uses a really simple and beautiful analogy. The divine voice offers up a little story, a parable, to illustrate the point. It grounds this huge theological idea in something superhuman, super relatable, the story of a father and his kids. So here's how the story goes. Imagine a father who has a bunch of beautiful children, and he just delights in all of them. But among them, there's one child who is, as the text puts it, not so beautiful as his companions. And it's this child, the imperfect one, that the father shows a special kind of tenderness to. He's the one the father holds close, comforting him with kind words and gifts. The father's love isn't lessened by the child's imperfection. In a way, it's actually drawn out because of it. And boom. That's the light bulb moment. The narrator realizes that their feeling of unworthiness isn't actually a barrier to God's love. In fact, it's the opposite. By humbly seeing themselves as that imperfect child, they can finally open themselves up to receiving that special, tender kind of love, what the text calls the torrents of celestial sweetness. This revelation just completely transforms the narrator's entire perspective. They move from this state of doubt and coldness to one of just profound gratitude. I mean, look at the transformation here. The heart that was like ice is now open to torrents of sweetness. That crushing feeling of unworthiness has turned into a humble esteem of self. And where prayer used to be blocked by doubt, it now just flows out as pure gratitude. So the narrator's final prayer really shows this new understanding. It's no longer that question of, how can you possibly love me? Instead, it's a prayer of thanks, an honest acknowledgement of their own limits, and a plea for help to become better, trusting that all their flaws are already being met with love. And that's really the core takeaway from this whole text. It leaves us with this one kind of mind-bending thought. What if we've been looking at our flaws all wrong? What if our imperfections aren't the things that disqualify us from love, but are in fact the very things that invite a deeper, more tender form of it.